Happy as always to welcome Joe DiGenova. He's a legal analyst and a former U.S. attorney to the District of Columbia. Joe, good morning.
Good morning.
All right, big weekend. This news coming out of the New York Times on Friday. The headline, FBI opened inquiry into whether Trump was secretly working on behalf of Russia. The general headline seems to be like, duh, we've been following this forever. But the specifics suggest that the FBI went to an even higher threshold right after the firing of James Comey. They immediately decided we're going to target President Trump in a more sincere way now. How do you read this story?
This story on Saturday, January 12th, marks the lowest point in the history of the New York Times, other than their refusing to cover the Holocaust in World War II. What they've done is created a cover story for Comey and Brennan and Obama and Susan Rice by trying to make it look like the criminal investigation of President Trump was started because Comey was fired. We all know that whatever they want to call the investigation of President Trump, they started investigating him in the spring of 2016 based on phony intelligence reports that they generated, which included the Steele dossier. What you have here is an amazing performance by Brennan and Comey, who are leaking information to the New York Times along with McCabe to create a cover story, because by the third or fourth week in February of this year, Mr. Mueller will conclude his investigation and will say that there was no Russian collusion, that there was no relationship between the Trump campaign and the Russians, and certainly that the President of the United States had no relationship with any of these people. This story is just a disgustingly feeble effort to give cover to these Obama administration officials who used the New York Times to try and destroy a president and a president-elect. It is really quite remarkable. And to watch the major cable news networks act as if this is something significant really should be an embarrassment to Mr. Pulitzer and all the people who give out these phony plastic awards every year to people. The people at the Post and the New York Times should all be ashamed of themselves. They are destroying American journalism.
Joe, why do they need a cover story? What do they fear? Well,
they fear, A, embarrassment, because it will show what they did, but they fear more than that. They fear a new attorney general in the person of Bill Barr, who will, in fact, make sure that if John Huber out in Utah isn't doing his job, someone will. And that job is to investigate criminal violations by Comey and Strzok and Page and McCabe and others to violate the civil rights of Donald Trump as a private citizen, as a transitional president-elect, and as president of the United States. Make no mistake about it. The civil rights of Donald Trump were violated by the FBI and the Department of Justice under Obama. And sad to say, Rod Rosenstein, the sniveling, conniving current Deputy Attorney General, was part of that plot later on in order to save his own tush, because he wanted to be part of a coup against the President of the United States. That's why this story came out. It's a counter-narrative because Mueller is going to pull the rug out from under them.
Well, it also, in the meantime, gives Democrats in the House cover to attempt to harass the president using their investigatory powers. Hey, look, the New York Times reported this thing. We have to investigate him. I want to ask you also about a detail in the New York Times piece that's really troubling to me, which is that the FBI based its rationales for investigating the president directly on the idea that he had, quote, refused to criticize Russia on the campaign trail, praised Vladimir Putin, and that investigators had, quote, watched with alarm as the Republican Party softened its convention platform on the Ukraine crisis in a way that seemed to benefit Russia. Joe, unless I'm mistaken, those are all political questions. Why would the FBI even begin an investigation on that basis?
Well, the story is designed to make that appear to be a legitimate counterintelligence or criminal issue for the Bureau to be concerned about. Of course, it is not. This is, again, they're trying to put a spin on it to make it look legitimate. This is a post hoc rationalization for illegal behavior by the FBI and the Department of Justice. This is what is so depressing and just infuriating about Jeff Sessions' refusal to tackle this when he was Attorney General. Sure, he recuses himself from the Russian investigation. Okay, What's he going to do to make sure it's investigated? He does a head fake and appoints Huber, who does nothing. The key witnesses in the cases that he is supposed to be investigating have not even been interviewed. This is a joke. This is an embarrassment to the department, and it shows that the presence of Rosenstein and other people, senior former Bush people at DOJ and FBI, continues to interfere with the investigation into the criminal violations by the Obama Justice Department and the Obama FBI. It's remarkable.
Well, Joe, you mentioned Jeff Sessions as a failure for getting to the bottom of this and rooting it out. But I'm not convinced Matt Whitaker's been any better. And I don't know, what gives you confidence that Bill Barr will be? You said you had some confidence that he'll actually keep Huber on task. Why do you have that confidence?
I have that confidence because I know Bill. I've seen him function before. I believe that he has the best interests of the department at heart, and he knows that as long as this hangs around and is never explained honestly to the American people, the Department of Justice and the FBI will never regain the confidence of the American people. By the way, Whitaker did one thing. He got a briefing from Mueller, and he got a personal briefing from Mueller about the status of the campaign. That's what he got. That's what he was there for. That's why the president is aware of what's going on, which is what he should be. So the bottom line here is I don't care about Whitaker. The truth is that Sessions, for 2 years, allowed this thing to go uninvestigated. That's a disgrace for an attorney general because he cared more about the institution per se rather than the state of equal justice under the law and the rule of law. No one has done more to undermine the rule of law than Jeff Sessions.
Was Jeff Sessions trying to protect himself from something? It doesn't make sense to me as to why he would allow this to happen.
Because he's a scared rabbit. He got savage during his confirmation hearings. He didn't want to deal with it anymore. He told people in meetings, people that I have spoken with, who were law enforcement officials, who said they wanted to investigate certain aspects of the Clinton campaign. Even if something was tangentially related to Hillary Clinton, he would go into a rage in a meeting and say, you're not going to do that. We won't have anything to do with that. He was, in fact, completely disabled as Attorney General because he feared the political consequences for himself, and he allowed himself to be beaten into a corner. It started with recusal, and it got worse after that.
Yeah, and the credibility of the Justice Department went along with him. All right, well, we're going to keep Joe DiGenova. We've got a lot more questions for him, especially as Bill Barr begins his hearings tomorrow. He'll be testifying before Congress, so I want to get some more thoughts.
We're here with Joe DiGenova talking about this New York Times report that was released. The other thing that came out, Joe, is from the Epoch Times, the transcripts of Lisa Page's closed-door testimonies. In this, we saw Harry Reid's name and a connection with Brennan. And the question I have for you, do we now know that Brennan gave the dossier to Reid before the FBI had it? That seems to be a question.
The answer to that question is apparently yes, that Brennan gave it to Reid, and then Reid set up this whole series of events that led to the CNN disclosure of the briefing of the president eventually later. Harry Reid was part of one of the agents of action to get this false narrative about the president out. By the way, Victoria Tunsing and I have a piece that will be coming up this morning on Fox.com about the entire New York Times article. It's called The New York Times Stinks, and it's about the stench from this horrible story. But Brennan is at the center of this entire scheme. He has been from the beginning. He's one of the sources for the New York Times story, and it's an effort by Brennan to blame Comey, believe it or not. Brennan is an amazingly sniveling, conniving, sneaky guy. He's an amazing. I guess if you vote for a communist for president, you're entitled to be that way.
All right, let's get into some of the other events that are developing this week. Bill Barr is set to testify before the Senate Judiciary Committee tomorrow and Wednesday in his nominating process to become the next Attorney General. What are we expecting, especially when you have three Democrats who are all Democratic presidential hopefuls, to include Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, and Amy Klobuchar, among another cast of characters that's on the minority of that committee?
Well, apparently it will continue to be a free fire zone against the Catholics of America. I expect, since Bill Barr is a member of the Knights of Columbus, that both Hirono, Crazy Maisie Hirono, and Kamala Harris will go after Barr for his membership in the all-men Catholic charitable organization called the Knights of Columbus. Their arrogance knows no bounds. So I expect him to be attacked on that. I expect him to be asked is he going to recuse himself from the Mueller investigation because he sent a memo to Rod Rosenstein explaining why the president can't obstruct justice when he fires someone pursuant to his Article 2 powers. I expect all sorts of stupid, inane, and wasteful questions to be asked, and I expect him to be confirmed.
But here's regarding the whole issue with the Knights of Columbus. We have Tulsi Gabbard going after Mazie Hirono on that, and we know Tulsi Gabbard's not a favorite of the Democrats. How did the Democrats win by attacking Catholics?
Well, they don't believe they need Catholics anymore. They have decided that the slew of illegal immigrants coming into the country to eventually somehow be rationalized with our legal system and become either legal or illegal voters, like the harvesting of votes in California, which took away 7 Republican seats, that they can win elections. They have turned themselves from a party of the worker, of people in the labor movement, to a different type of Democratic Party. These are loony leftists. That's what the Democratic Party is. Anastasia Ocasio-Cortez is not an aberration. She is the new soul of the Democratic Party. This is going to be very ugly. Attacking Catholics. When you have, just think about this for a minute. Kamala Harris is a Baptist. She slept her way to power by being the girlfriend of Willie Brown while he was married. And then you have Mazie Hirono, a Buddhist, going after, so you have a Baptist and a Buddhist going after the Catholics. What a great sign for the Democratic Party.
Well, considering that most of these people coming in from Central and South America are Catholic, I'm not quite sure how this works for them.
Well, they don't care about that because they think that the Catholic Church has lost its power in Central America and that the conversion of people down there to evangelical religions is the state of play down there. But it's almost as if religion doesn't matter. It's just a prop for them. Catholicism is a prop for the Democratic Party. But what's so bizarre about this is they say the Knights of Columbus is offensive because it believes in life, that it's anti-abortion. That happens to be the teaching of the Catholic Church. So they put themselves at odds with an entire religion because it's about abortion. Make no mistake about it. This Catholic men's organization, the Knights of Columbus, which does marvelous work with food kitchens and charitable things and scholarships, hundreds of millions of dollars of gifts and things. This is not about what they do or the fact that they're an all-men organization. It's about abortion. Abortion is the Bible of the Democratic Party. You're either for it or you're against it. And if you're against it, you're not a Democrat. You're not a real Democrat. So the Knights of Columbus are the enemy because they're against abortion.
All right, well, we'll keep our eyes open as Bill Barr is subjected to that kind of questioning tomorrow. Joe DiGenova, thank you as always.
You bet.
All right, 7:22 now, WMAL.
Thank you very much for all you do.
105.9 FM and AM 630 WMAL.
Thank you for personally inspiring me.
That's good to hear. Where Washington comes to talk.